And this story, as I just mentioned, a new review reveals weak oversights and poor standards in medical cannabis pharmacies, with 7 out of 24 failing compliance checks. What is going on? Tougher regulation and improved safeguards are planned to fix the problem. We'll speak to Graham Woodward in a second, Chief Operating Officer of Relief, joining us in a moment. But first, Greg Hoedt, Chairman of the UKCSC, that's the UK Cannabis Social Clubs. Good afternoon to you, Greg.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having us on.
It's a pleasure. Obviously, you know, we can talk about cannabis from a number of angles. This one happens to focus on the medicinal element of using cannabis, and there's apparently a problem down at the pharmacist. I didn't even know you could get it in a pharmacist.
Well, you've not been paying attention to the news because it's been available for 7 years in the UK now.
Is it? I'm told that you've got to jump through hoops to get it. Is that still the case?
You could go through a private clinic. It's relatively easy to get if you qualify for it. If you've got a medical condition where you've been given several other medications before, then yeah, you'll be able to get it if you've got the right condition.
And in terms of, I was just thinking about people deciding what condition they've got to try and get their cannabis. But of course, we're not talking about the stuff you might buy off a fella in a street corner, right?
Diagnosed by a doctor.
Indeed, yeah.
It's not silly.
You're not going to suddenly say, "Oh, I've got a bad back. Give me some of that."
Well, if you've got a bad back and your doctor confirms you've got a bad back and gives you medication for it, and that's not effective, and there are private clinics that will offer you cannabis, and
yeah. And this is explain. I mean, this is a separate point, largely to the bigger issue here. But explaining what form this cannabis comes.
Herbal cannabis, oils, tinctures, capsules,
yep.
Vape pens, patches, lozenges, anything that you can infuse cannabinoids in. It's
got it.
You know, as long as it's been made in the right facilities with the right licenses.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, it's an obvious point, but you don't go to the pharmacy and get a packet of Rizzlers and some gear in a bag. It doesn't work like that. Although, you know, many people would say that would be preferable, but this is done properly through, as you say, correct diagnosis and medicinally checked in all the right places to make sure it's right for the patient. What is going wrong then, Greg, in pharmacies?
I think that the term quality is misunderstood on the pharmacy side compared to the patient side, and there have been, you know, many complaints by patients who've received their legal prescription in the post, and it's got mold in it, it's got seeds in it, it's not been prepared properly, and it's just not suitable for human consumption. And while it may pass the standards that the pharmacy has been operating on, and I believe they have improved now, there is a new monograph available which tells pharmacies what standards the cannabis has to adhere to. If it meets that, it's available to go to the market, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's of a high grade. Like the quality means the quality assurance checks, but it might just be really crap cannabis at the end of the day that patients want to vaporize. Yeah. And that needs to be listened to. There's serious concerns.
100%. Could it be dangerous, though? Are there things that are happening in terms of these lack of quality or checks that could endanger a patient?
If there's mold on there, then that's definitely a risk. These patients are inhaling the medication, and again, if there's seeds in it and they're being ground up and inhaled, seed oils aren't exactly healthy to inhale. Yeah. There are standards being put in place to prevent those things from happening, and there needs to be more quality checks in place if they are, you know, indeed slipping through the cracks.
What is your overarching kind of view of medicinal cannabis in this country, Greg? Do you think this needs to be rolled out to a wider group of people with issues? As you rightly say, you don't just nip into Boots and say, you know, can I have some? Diagnosis and all that's required. But is that quite stringent? Are there patients crying out saying, you know, why do I not fit the criteria?
It does need to be made more available. I think the criteria is too strict for what we've got in the UK. It has to go for a specialist consultant and for a private clinic. It would be nice if it was available in the NHS, but we need these big companies to start putting their money where their mouth is. And if they're selling it as medicine, they need to start putting the the money into the studies to prove that it's medicine, and for what conditions it works for and what doses. Because at the moment, very few of the companies that have flocked to medical cannabis since it was legal, and they flocked to it from, you know, finance and tech and other pharmaceutical to make money out of this space, because it does have you know, very little regulation, because the medicines aren't approved by the MHRA or NICE yet, so they're not available on the NHS. So people have flocked to this space to make money out of the situation that there is, and unfortunately, people can't grow their own at home yet, but people are allowed to, you know, other companies are allowed to sell it to you. Whereas people have been growing cannabis before it was made illegal. Before it was made legal to prescribe, and they were doing quite well. You know, sourcing their own medicine, treating their condition in the way that they saw fit. And, you know, now they're forced to go through pharmacies. Many of those people say the quality is not the same. I don't get the same relief that I used to. And many people have gone back to the grey market, to cannabis social clubs, and to growing their own.
Yeah, I can well imagine, given these kind of concerns. Listen, Greg, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Greg Hoedt is the chairman of the UK Cannabis Social Clubs. Let's speak for Graham Woodward, who's Chief Operating Officer at Relief, the UK's highest-rated cannabis clinic. Good afternoon to you, Graham.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
I mean, what's your overarching take on the issue of medicinal cannabis?
When it's prescribed, as Greg has just said, when you've gone through the rigid procedures that you have to, so you have to have, as Greg said, you have to have been tried other licensed medications before you can access medical cannabis. You have to go for a full assessment. GPs and nurses can't prescribe or initiate the prescription. It has to be initiated by a consultant on the GMC registry. So it's very regulated. I believe Greg was one of our staff at Relief, actually, so he knows very well how we operate. And I think the difference between talking about GPHC and talking about clinics, they're very different things. The GPHC obviously monitor the pharmacies and the chemists and the distributors, and as a clinic, the reason I'm not in the UK right now is because I travel quite widely, globally, looking at the quality of medical cannabis that's grown and that is then available to patients in the clinic in the UK.
So in terms of what we need to do, I mean, obviously, if there are standards issues, then that is, you know, clearly something that needs to be addressed. And in its worst form, as Greg was just saying, if patients are getting something that's a bit mouldy, that can't be good for anybody.
I think the standards have not, whereas the standards for prescribing cannabis are quite clear, I think there is some grey areas on what clinics can prescribe. Some clinics, we stick very rigidly to global guidance, which is we won't go above 25% flower. Some clinics go into 33%, which is very strong cannabis. We won't prescribe more than 60 grams a month. Some clinics prescribe up to 120 and beyond, so more than you would actually probably need. So we are always looking, we capture patient data, so we have 15 validated tools that monitor the patients in our care so that we can see that they're getting a positive outcome from their experience of being with us.
What is your thoughts, Graham, on where this story goes next? Because obviously there are lots of patients, and whether, and I've interviewed many over the years, you know, parents with kids who have fits and, you know, horrendous issues around that, whereas medicinal cannabis has helped, but they've had to almost go abroad and spend, you know, thousands of pounds trying to get that medication, which is quite tragic, despite the fact, as Greg said, yes, there's obviously been a green light for this for some years now, but it doesn't make it any easier to access if you really need it. And there's clearly, this is a story of, you know, many components. Not every patient has the same experience. And on that point, Graham's line somewhat froze on us. Always said, does technology know that this stuff happens at the end of a question? I don't know. That always seems to be when it goes. If we can get him back, we will do. If not, we'll return to your calls and comments. I would be intrigued to know, by the way, in terms of that whole issue of taking medicinal cannabis, your experience of that. Because I know over the years this phone-in it comes and goes, and it's around, and, you know, we talk about it, and someone will always say, I have, you know, some, I don't know, neurological condition, some kind of form of pain, which is always the big one. And that pain is unbearable until taking medicinal cannabis, and then it literally address the problem. Doesn't mean it goes away all the time, but the difference is between, you know, wanting to live and not. If it's that strong, you can absolutely understand the need for it. But of course, there's politics involved in this as well. Simon is in Buckinghamshire on this very point.